Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Canadian Shield. My name is Sterling. I'm your host. The Trudeau government has approved Canadian equipment to be used inside of Russia's borders as an inoffensive action taken against Russia and the Russian people. I will explain to you why that is it's extreme so much about how little they know. The immigration minister has made an announcement today, and I know we've heard him say in recent days that there will be no more temporary foreign workers under a certain economic value. There will be no more students permitted in here unless they have all of the money that they need to settle. I know that there has been talk about cutting the immigration limits and lowering the levels. However, all of that may be true, except if you speak French, and then none of it is true. The federal government has decided that you can get an exemption on every single solitary one of those things. In a weird twist, a politician in Ottawa has elected to boycott the LGB parade that's going to be happening there at the end of August because of their position and approach toward another community. So, I think we're basically come full circle. And the United States, true to form, has nearly doubled the tariffs that's put on softwood lumber for Canadian manufacturers. And we're going to be discussing how that's probably could be good for Canadians. However, the federal Liberals are not handling it well and will not handle it well. All that's coming up. But before we get into it, I would encourage you all to like, comment, subscribe, hit the notification bell, share this channel with all of your socials. Now, if I'm honest with you, they have got me in a death grip. My numbers are flat. I must have said something right, and I must have done something right because what was going really quickly, and now all of a sudden my numbers are just, my reach is nowhere. So if you hit the notification bell, this will show up right in your feed, and then you can take it out of your feed and show it directly to your friend. And this way we can sort of circumvent the censorship bills that the CRTC and that Justin Trudeau are so adamant that they can implement on us to try and make everyone believe that it's my fault that you think that your life has been put astray by the Liberal government. Okay, so we're going to open with the new immigration policy, and I'll explain to you how it is completely and 100% one-sided. The new Canada immigration pilot to welcome more Francophone international students. Canada Immigration Minister Mark Miller unveiled on Wednesday the new Francophone minority community student pilot program, which will be launched August 26th. The new pilot will exempt Francophone international students and their families from having to demonstrate they will leave Canada at the end of their temporary stay, as well as lower the financial threshold. So not only do they not have to say, yes, we're only coming here to learn and then we'll leave, they don't have to have as much money to support themselves when they get here. So how in a housing crisis are they going to support themselves? Well, the answer, of course, is that you and I are going to support them. Taxpayer is going to fund them. Now, the taxpayer is not funding the person who was born here, but the taxpayer is funding someone who is coming here because of the language that they speak. And one of the key components of tyranny is that you bring in foreign influence, right? Because they don't have any problem executing the rules against the people born domestically. That's a different video. In its bid to boost the approval rate for these international students, many of whom come from French-speaking countries in Africa, Ottawa is setting the financial threshold to reflect 75% of the low-income cutoff associated with municipalities where the designated learning institution, colleges, and universities have their main campuses. Promoting French is the prime important to us. And I think that that's what's really important to look at in this, that it's just a ploy in an effort to try to convince Francophones to vote Liberal. It's just a blatant, again, not very subtle, not very nuanced attempt by the Liberal government to bribe you into voting for them, to convince you that if you vote for them, they will give you everything that you want, and they don't care what the local population considers. This one kind of irks me because we have heard nothing but the Quebec politicians talk about how they want to separate from Canada. They want their own constitution. They want all of the equalization payments. They want to be able to decide whether or not people from Mexico can come into Montreal. And yet the Francophone minister has decided that French-speaking people should be put in Abbotsford. They should be put in they're putting them in British Columbia. They're going to put them in Southern Ontario. They're going to put them in a couple of cities in Quebec, and they're going to put them in Manitoba because those are populations where French-speaking people already exist. then they say, well, we're doing it to protect the French language. But if you were protecting my issue is pretty straightforward. If you're trying to protect the French language by bringing people who speak French into the country, why spread them out? Concentrating them is how you go ahead and preserve the language and the culture. That's why in big cities you have like a little Chinatown or a little Italy or a little, Odessa. I've heard of that one too. Because people who speak the same language will come to the country and then they will congregate in their own particular neighborhood, which is ironic when you consider that the French language laws originally attacked that very type of community in Quebec that were Italian speaking in the island of Montreal. Why is the French language in Canada on decline? Well, primarily because everybody wants to speak English. I mean, the first thing these people will do when they get here is speak English. They will do their best to watch English-speaking television, English-speaking music. And it's that culture that drives the language. It's not anything else. And it's hard to get people who are so fixated on one particular aspect of their personality to get them to understand that. But I'm not trying to talk this one into the French language laws, which I completely and utterly 100% disagree with. I am trying to get you to see how they will set all of this bar, and they will tell you, the immigration minister will tell you that they are, going to crack down on too many people coming to this country that are not prepared to live here, that can't find homes, that can't do this, that, and the other thing. Unless, of course, we can appease the French voter, and then we will bring in many more people to speak French, if it means that we will get votes. So you have to ask yourself, what can you believe? What's the truth? In yet another demonstration of their lack of comprehension of all things diplomatic, the Liberal government has cleared Ukraine to use tanks that Canada has given to Ukraine on Russian soil to this Kirk's salient, which is not anywhere near as exciting as people want to believe that it is. So do not let the headlines fool you. This time, though, I will be speaking of the lack of comprehension of the diplomacy. The reason that we have to worry about what tanks go into what border is not because, it's Canadian on Russian soil, so let's get Canada. No, it's got nothing to do with that. It has absolutely everything to do with the tech. The idea that you're going to get your hands on one of those tanks and then turn it into something of your own to break it down and reverse engineer it is what you are supposed to be concerned about. That's what you're supposed to not want to permit to happen. We watch too many World War II movies where everybody's just driving around in a tank going, yay, look at me, look at me. We don't ever consider the idea that one of the ways that we can turn our very weapons into giving the weapons to our enemy is by letting them have access to our weapons. And the Americans, the British, they understand this. That's why they don't let their tanks out of their sight. The British and the American tanks, they're always accounted for. They're like, where is that? And if they can't take it out with them, they blow it to smithereens. Because they don't want anybody to have access to the technology that those machines and give them, the enemy, a leg up or a way to counter it. But Canada doesn't seem to have anything to worry about in our tanks. Our tanks are so old school that we don't even have to worry about what technology's in it. Our tanks are so behind the times that we don't even have to care we don't really care if the Russian gets his hands on it, because they can there's nothing in there that they can't learn from. There's nothing in there that their own tanks don't already have. I mean, that's the basic idea of what Justin Trudeau and his government said today when they told Ukraine that it was okay to use Canadian hardware on Russian soil, at the same time as demanding that our Canadian, that the soldiers still in Canada do without equipment and do without $810 million. To me, it shows a profound lack of comprehension of not only warfare, but diplomacy. And if they were not a government riddled with scandal, more than 53 at this count, those two things alone should make us ask ourselves, why are we giving authority to this group? Ottawa's mayor has announced that he will not be attending the Pride organization's parade when it occurs during the end of the month in August. I believe it kicks off on August 26th. Jewish community groups withdraw support from the Ottawa Pride after anti-Israel statement. Jewish community groups in Ottawa are pulling support from Capital Pride after the group that organizes the annual Pride event released an anti-Israel statement announcing support for the boycott, divestment, and sanctions movement. I can't begin to describe to you how foolish it is for people who are saying we are marginalized, notice us, to start to try and marginalize other people. And I'm going to do a whole video on the fact that the far left is now who they are exactly who they claimed they were trying to go after when they launched their movements. They are the same person, only they're, instead of being wrapped in a three-piece suit, they're wrapped in a rainbow flag. They want to stick their nose in the idea that Israel should do whatever it's got to do in the Middle East. And as many of returning viewers know, I try my best to just not talk about that particular conflict in this particular stage. So much so that now the politician in the city is torn between two groups. That is the clown world that we are living in. Here's some statistics. According to an annual hate crime report by Ottawa Police from February 2024, 92 or 27% of the 460 hate-related incidents in the hate crimes unit investigated in 2023 targeted the Jewish community, representing a 41.5% increase in hate crimes against the Jewish community from the previous year. For context, the Jewish community made up 1.5% of Ottawa's over 1 million residents in 2021, according to the most recent Statistics Canada consensus. In Ottawa, we are the number one target for hate crimes, even though we aren't 1% of the population, this Jewish spokesman said. There was a plot against Ottawa's Jewish community. Institutions have been targeted multiple times. Shots have been fired at Jewish schools across Canada 6 times since October. JFO said in a separate statement, "We have good reason to be worried for our safety, and inflaming this hate just makes it more dangerous." And I can't agree with them more. Now, this is one of the reasons that I don't like to talk about it, because I don't want people to start to, I'm not getting drawn into that story. I know enough to know better. I can say that the LGB would not be happy if that list, if I took the list out, if I took that same list I just said and removed Jewish and put in LGB. People would be losing their minds. So why would they marginalize the already marginalized? Why would the minority attack another minority and then say that they're doing the right thing, say that they're being virtuous? It's bizarre. It's a clown world. And this is exactly what the federal liberals hope for, that each of the little groups will turn on one another and everybody will vote for them because they'll tell them, every single solitary one of them, what they want to hear. You would have to let me know your opinion down in the comments. Regular viewers of my channel will know that I talk a lot about economics and trade and diplomacy and things like that. Recently, we have been talking about aluminum from China and aluminum steel from China having tariffs put on it by the Americans, and Canadian producers expecting the Liberal Party to do something about it, and how the Liberal Party only cares that they can try to turn it and blame the Conservatives for something. Now it is, of course, blown back on the Liberal Party, as it would, because they clearly exhibit very little understanding of diplomacy. I swear sometimes it's like listening to, I don't know, like fake UN that you would have in high school or something, the fantasies that come out of these guys' positions. Sorry, as I was saying, the Americans have now nearly doubled the tariff on Canadian softwood lumber. U.S. nearly doubles duty on Canadian softwood lumber. The sharp increase in duty was signaled in February, but the 14.5% rate went even higher than expected. The U.S. is drastically increasing the duty it charges on softwood lumber imports from Canada, setting the rate at 14.54%. The previous date rate was 8.05%, so nearly 6.5% it went up. Now, they have been talking to the Americans since March. Eng, the ambassador, they'd all been running around saying, look, we have to have, they didn't even want, they tried to get them to come down from the 8.5%. And remember, this is a Biden administration. This isn't Trump. This is Biden. So this isn't, you can't tell yourself that it's anything other than just the economic advisors of the United States of America saying we can't have this product swarming through our systems because it is undercutting the price of our domestic supply. So we're going to tax on 14.5%, which, technically is still less than the carbon tax, which many of the lumbers already pay because they have to use a lot of, fuel to get these trees down, milled, cut, transported, so on and so forth. What happens in the American soft lumber, what the concern with the Americans and Canadian soft lumber, Ottawa gives them a little bit of a break. And so internationally, that's looked upon as dumping. When you can take your cheaply made product because the government taxpayer subsidizes that product and then sell it in another market, somebody else's market, and undercut the domestic market, that's what they call dumping internationally. And unfortunately for Canada, they lost. We took this to the ICC, I believe, and they lost the tribunal, I believe, ruled against them, that they are in fact dumping softwood lumber into the United States of America. But the Americans are building houses. The Americans are not, trying to not build things. They're not saying that we gotta stop building. We know that trees can be planted. We'll grow some more. Let's build some houses because people need it. And Canada doesn't seem to want to put their mind around that. So, we all know Justin Trudeau and Sean Fraser and all their position on it. They are allowing Canadian softwood lumber to be taxed through the roof at nearly 15%, which is pretty high, rather than just dump it into our own market and let us build houses for next to nothing. They talk about making it cheaper on GST to build a house, but really, wouldn't the lumber be cheapest? Wouldn't the smart thing to do would be to take 7% of the tax, like if we say the GST being 7%, wouldn't it be better to just take 7% of our overall GDP, buy lumber, and just build houses for next to nothing? But then they couldn't take control of it, I guess. Then they wouldn't be able to allow it to pass through a bureaucracy, and they would, all of the stuff that goes along with that, and they might offend the Green vote, who apparently all have a place to live because they're not complaining about it. So we can see on the one hand how this increased tariff will help the domestic market, Canada's domestic market, because they will still want to get this product to the store, which will mean that Canadians can build houses less expensive. Now, that would be only one small factor. There has to be so many factors that the liberal housing policy would basically have to be reversed 100%. Then we could take the inexpensive lumber and actually start from scratch. The only people that would be upset about it are people who work for banks, right? Because they're the ones that are mostly invested in the price of land and the price of high-rise buildings. Think of the idea that you buy a piece of land and all of a sudden you're selling 40 or 50 floors worth of $1 million units. That adds a lot of money to somebody's, bonus. Anyway, I'm going to wrap here. I want to thank you for listening. I'll talk to you next time.